the Stoic formula for clear thinking and mental strength. In this chaotic world, clarity is king or queen, and who better to guide us than Marcus Aurelius? This dude wasn't just some armchair philosopher. He was a Roman emperor, knee-deep in power, temptations galore, but he chose fairness and justice instead. Marcus Aurelius is one of the most famous and well-known Stoic philosophers of all time. He was a Roman emperor from 161 to 180 AD, and he was the last ruler from a line later known as the Five Good Emperors. He was in one of the highest positions of power in the world at the time and would have access to the realization of all his temptations and desires should he wish for them. But instead, he dedicated his life to fairness and justice. So what's his secret? Stoicism, of course. It's an ancient philosophy that's less about dusty theories and more about practical wisdom. Aurelius actually took the time to write down his thoughts, which later turned into meditations. During his rule, Aurelius found the time to construct a series of autobiographical writings, now known as the Meditations, which has become one of the most important texts within Stoic philosophy. In the Meditations, Aurelius describes guides on how to improve oneself. These are mostly focused on taking a cosmic perspective and critically analyzing your judgment on yourself and others. And because he was a leader of a powerful empire that experienced multiple wars during his rule, Aurelius used his own Stoic philosophy to let go of stress and worries, and to be the very best and reliable leader he could be. Stoicism is an ancient and incredibly famous philosophy that, aside from a theory, is also a truly inspiring way of thinking and living. The Stoics strongly believed that doing the right thing was the key to individual happiness, and that in order to do the right thing, sound judgment and clear rational thinking was necessary. His book has become one of the most important texts within Stoic philosophy. So, with that in mind, we're diving into 5 key lessons from Aurelius that can help you develop a more rational mind. 1. Train your perception, seeing things as they are, not as you fear they are. Ever notice how we automatically slap a label on everything we encounter? Good, bad, boring, exciting, we're constantly judging. As Marcus Aurelius says, choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. One of the greatest lessons of Stoicism is to take control of your perception. We're used to judging everything we come across. Any event we experience, any people we meet, sights we see, all of them get a value judgment. Something was either bad, good, boring, fun, beautiful, ugly, etc. This is, unbeknownst to us, a very exhausting practice and also one that might affect our lives for the worse. And sometimes that judgment is completely off base. For example, judging every interaction you have on a particularly hard day as awful gives the day itself an even more negative view. If you label a party you went to as boring, that is all it will be, that one boring part of your week. We often let our initial judgments of things be influenced by our emotions, which means that they're most likely not entirely rational. Furthermore, our tendency to judge every moment of our lives goes hand in hand with a tendency to talk in metaphors and hyperboles that make things seem worse. Ever notice how we tend to use dramatic language to describe our problems? It's easy to say that if you get dumped by your partner, you might say your ex broke your heart, instead of the fundamental fact that they no longer feel for you the way they used to. This way of speaking, or rather, this way of thinking shapes how you feel. It is not the actual event that makes you feel bad, but rather the way you unconsciously choose to think about it. We say, my heart is broken, instead of I am sad. That's not to say heartbreak isn't painful, but framing it as a fatal wound instead of a temporary state of sadness can amplify the suffering. It's not the event itself, but our interpretation of it that causes the most pain. So, the Stoics, in contrast, encourage people to be careful to judge everything you come across and the things that you do, and one of the ways to be careful is to undo your judgments, which essentially means to look past them, to be able to forget your first instinct, and to judge something through a more optimistic and reasonable lens. You have to train yourself to think objectively about the situation at hand. One way to do that is to undo your judgments. Look past your first instinct and try to see things through a more optimistic, reasonable lens. Ask yourself, is this rational? What have I based my opinion on? Is there a better or more positive way to interpret this? Instead, you could try to reframe that boring party in your mind as an event where you got to see a new place and meet some new people. Okay, afterwards you might note that you didn't really resonate with anyone, but you didn't go in with the expectation of negativity. It's about challenging your initial reaction and looking for alternative explanations. As such, practicing not to judge everything based on your first instinct and emotion is the very best way to start training your perception on life. Marcus Aurelius stressed that harms can only be if you consider them as harms. This means that any hard experience you went through seems harder and worse, the harder and worse you consider it to be. As such, you have complete control over how much certain situations affect you. The Stoics also encourage you to see every bad thing that happens as an opportunity or source for good. It's about finding the silver lining in every cloud, the potential for growth in every setback. As an exercise of training your perspective in a Stoic way, there's a challenge called turning the obstacle upside down. When a new coworker is a slow learner and their mistakes affect the company's profits, you might feel frustration. This coworker is an obstacle to what you are trying to achieve: effectiveness, efficiency, and profit. However, this situation can also be an opportunity for good. It is an opportunity for youth to exercise and practice patience, to become a better teacher, to learn how to integrate new people into the company, and how to handle stressful times. All of these are skills that will also be useful later and should also help you increase profits in the long run as well. On this subject, Marcus Aurelius famously said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." So, all in all, instead of judging everything you come across in an exaggerated sense, take the time to look at things as they objectively are, and you might find that life is simpler and clearer than you thought. Every situation has a more positive interpretation and a more negative one. This is the turning the obstacle upside down exercise. Take a problem and ask yourself, how can I turn this into a benefit? Your coworker's slowness might force you to become a better teacher, which, in turn, improves your leadership skills. This kind of approach, you'll find that nothing bothers you as much as it used to, and you will get through life much more easily. Learning to see things objectively, without the filter of our emotions and preconceived notions, can bring a sense of clarity and calm to our lives. 2. Learn to control your emotions, directing the storm within. Emotions, those powerful currents that can sweep us away in an instant. Feeling them can be a great tool, but sometimes they cloud our judgment. Marcus Aurelius advises us to stop letting your emotions override what your mind tells you. Stop being hypocritical, self-centered, irritable. Acting out of emotion is often depicted as a stark contrast to acting rationally, and this is not without reason. There is nothing that clouds our judgment more than our own emotions can. So if you want to think clearly at all times, one of the most important skills to master is the ability to control your emotions. According to Marcus Aurelius, the emotion of anger, in particular, does us more harm than good. So, how do we wrangle those wild beasts? Contrary to what many people seem to think or try, controlling your emotions does not mean suppressing them. When you feel intense anger as a result of a betrayal, you cannot control this anger by denying its existence to yourself or others or by pretending you're fine. It will still be there, no matter how deep down you push it. Instead, controlling emotions such as anger is, according to the Stoics, done by redirecting emotions, instead of bottling them up or pretending they don't exist. So when you're next experiencing anger, ask yourself what you can do with that anger. Yelling at the one who hurt you might seem tempting, but will it help you lessen your hurt or better your situation? Will it help the one who betrayed you be better? In short, think about what you are tempted to do and then ask yourself if it is helpful. If not, find ways to express your emotions that are helpful. The key is to channel them in a productive way. Maybe you can achieve better results by calmly talking with the one who hurt you, explaining your feelings, and trying to see their side. You could also journal, take part in physical exercise, get lost in a video game, or anything else that might help you let go of your anger afterward. For another example, take anxiety or fear. You cannot simply push it down, but you can redirect it. Instead of letting anxiety paralyze you, you can use it to challenge yourself to take those actions that make you feel it and acknowledge its existence throughout. Let's say you're too scared to ask your boss for a raise. Lots of people see such fear as a reason not to do something, and they allow themselves to be stopped by their anxieties. Others might be able to go through with it and regard their anxiety as something that is in the way and needs to be pushed down and ignored. But neither has to be the case. Instead, your fear is something that can be expressed healthily and maybe even end up being helpful. It can also be a signal to prepare, to rehearse, to anticipate potential challenges. For example, this fear makes you think about everything that can go wrong, which can lead you to consider all the possible questions your boss might ask, all the counter-arguments you might get to hear. This way you can brace for them and form a plan for each possible scenario. But most importantly, the fear provides a positive motivation to go through with it, to challenge yourself and grow as a person, to prove to yourself that you can, to make the step not despite your fear, but partly because of it. And in that scenario, you can be aware of the anxiety throughout and think, how awesome that I'm trying this anyway. It's not about eliminating fear, but using it as fuel. When you manage to redirect strong emotions with ease, you will be a calm person no matter what, and your emotions will never lessen your ability to think rationally and make smart decisions. When you can feel and react and express emotions in a healthy way, you are a calmer person. Your emotions will never lessen your ability to think rationally and make smart decisions. It's about becoming the master of your emotions, not their slave. 3. Exercise the dichotomy of control. What's yours to wield? What's yours to accept? This one's a game changer. To quote Marcus Aurelius, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The dichotomy of control is the distinction between what we can control and what we cannot. It's the ability to distinguish between what you can influence and what you can't. For example, the weather, traffic issues, or what people think about you are all outside of your control. But how you dress, at what time you leave, and the kind of people you surround yourself with, that you can control. Learning to recognize the difference and then act accordingly can clear your mind instantly. So, whenever you face a situation that makes you feel a certain way, ask yourself, what can I control? Whatever you can control is a reason to act. Whatever you cannot control, you should learn to accept and embrace without letting it affect you. This isn't about apathy. It's about focusing your energy where it matters. A very important part of the dichotomy of control is a more fatty, or, translated, love for fate. When you embrace life and all the circumstances it brings you, you will always love life. You cannot escape fate or decide circumstances that are out of your control, but you can choose to love your life no matter what. A more fatty, or love of fate. It's about embracing everything that comes your way, even the tough stuff. It's about accepting that life is going to throw you curveballs and that you can't control everything that happens to you. It's about choosing to love your life, no matter what. For example, if you find that you're rejected for a job you have wanted for years, you might think there is no redemption in such a situation. You wanted the job, tried and failed. You couldn't possibly pretend to love fate in a circumstance like this. However, this is a misunderstanding. Instead of viewing the fact you didn't fulfill your ambition purely as a negative, investigate what led to the negative result and use it to make a positive move. Either the reason you didn't get the job was a failure on your part, in which case this is something you can control. You can work on those failings and try again when a similar opportunity appears in the future. Or the reason was an external factor, like nepotism or a personality clash with a member of the hiring staff. This was never in your control, meaning the opportunity never truly existed, and there's no point getting upset over something that has never existed. Okay, I didn't get the job. What did I learn from this? What can I do differently next time? Maybe you need to improve your interview skills, or maybe the job wasn't the right fit for you anyway. One part of accepting fate is distancing yourself from a fixed outcome and from external markers of success. If you want to be a writer, for example, and measure your success by the amount of sales your book makes, then you will let your success be controlled by the arbitrary book market of the time. But if you choose to measure your success by how satisfied you are with your finished product or by the amount of work you put into it, then you are in control of your success. If you're a writer, focus on doing your best. Success, that is sales, in your book is not something you can control. Make sure to do everything in your power to try and achieve your goals. But never forget that you might not achieve them, and accept this possibility in advance. This will give you great relief because you do not feel pressured to do things for a certain outcome. If we occupy ourselves only with what is in our control and vow to accept everything that isn't the exact way it comes, then one will find themselves being calm whatever happens. 4. Keep virtues in mind. The moral compass for a clear mind. What are the core principles that guide your actions? As Marcus Aurelius said, dig deep within yourself, for there is a fountain of goodness ever ready to flow if you will keep digging. A virtue is an excellence of character, or, simply said, morally good behavior. Morally good behavior benefits not only you and those around you, but the greater good. The Stoics believed in an interdependent universe, that everything and everyone is connected in some way. Thus, according to Stoicism, what is best for the greater good is eventually best for you as well. This is why the Stoics were convinced that the most rational people were people that committed to the greater good, or, in other words, acted virtuously. Not acting virtuous is the result of ignorance, according to Stoics. So, what exactly are these virtues? When life throws you in an unexpected direction, virtues can guide you towards what to do and keep you grounded. This is why the most virtuous people are the calmest and most relaxed. In order to be virtuous, one has to keep the 4 most important virtues of Stoicism in mind: wisdom, justice, temperance, and courage. Wisdom, in the eyes of Stoics, is the ability to judge what is good, bad, in between, or neutral. Instead of being controlled by emotion, one must think clearly and logically as to what would be the morally correct thing to do. Justice is acquired through wisdom, and it means doing both what is right and fair, to others as well as ourselves. It's about treating everyone with respect, fairness, and compassion. When you have 2 options in a difficult situation, wisdom is the ability to think through both then justice. Justice is acquired through wisdom, and it means doing both what is right and fair, to others as well as ourselves. The Stoics regard it as one's duty to both one's self, our fellow men, and society as a whole. The third virtue, courage, is the ability to take action in the face of your own fear, to do what is necessary or helpful even when you do not know you will succeed. Courage is not the elimination of fear, desire, or anxiety. Rather, it is deciding to act and taking steps despite our fear, passion, and anxiety. Lastly, temperance. The other word for temperance is moderation, which means to stay in the middle between 2 extremes, to make sure to never take too much or too little. It's about finding balance and avoiding excess in all areas of your life. In practice, temperance often looks like self-restraint, self-control, or discipline. According to Aurelius, one quality that set humans apart from animals was the ability to stop oneself if necessary. Temperance is important for ensuring our long-term well-being over short-term satisfaction. For a very trivial example, consider a bag of chips. Finishing the entire bag in one go might be nice at the moment, but it is bad for your health and even potentially your mood in some cases. Thus, one should practice self-restraint and stop after the first few bites. Temperance is also aided by wisdom. Only by thinking wisely can you decide how much of something you need to acquire before stopping yourself. The Stoics divided all possible things and actions in the world between goods, evils, and indifference. It was always important to seek out good, avoid evil, and choose the indifference as you please. You create evil when you act against one of these virtues. For example, when you steal from somebody, disrespect someone, act recklessly or cowardly, or make somebody ill. You participate in good when you act according to these virtues. And you do neither when you perform in different acts, like taking a walk, for example. When facing difficult decisions, or even just navigating your day-to-day life, ask yourself, am I acting with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance? Acting according to the virtues allows you to always be acting rationally. Such behavior creates a calm mind. 5. Always consider the big picture, taking the cosmic view. Perspective is everything. In our final quote from Marcus Aurelius for this video, he says, how beautifully Plato put it. Whenever you want to talk about people, it's best to take a bird's eye view and see everything all at once. Considering the big picture is a tremendously important part of clearing one's mind. It's easy to get caught up in the small stuff, to lose sight of the forest for the trees. But taking a step back and seeing the bigger picture can provide much-needed clarity and calm. When living life, we're always right in the middle of everything. Every problem can seem like the end of the world. For example, when you're in the middle of a small crowd, it might seem that the entire city is crowded, but taking only a few steps aside will prove the opposite. So, in general, when we take a step back and look at the entirety of the world in our lives, we see how small all we experience really is and how tiny we truly are. It can be a humbling, but also liberating experience. The weight of your problems can seem lighter when you realize how small they are in the grand scheme of things. And then we see how much of the world is there beyond our subjective experience. Lots of people forget that their experiences and opinions are not the only thing that should matter, even to themselves. Someone who's had a bad experience with dogs, for example, might not understand or believe that dogs can be helpful and amazing pets to others, unless they consciously consider the possibility of other experiences. It's about recognizing that your perspective is not the only one that matters. It's about being open to other possibilities and other points of view. From time to time, we all need to take a step back and ask ourselves, what are we forgetting or missing? Doing this can be helpful in a number of ways. For example, imagine having to choose between staying at your current job or applying for a newly opened position somewhere else. This might seem like a difficult decision, especially if you're not sure whether either of those would satisfy you. Maybe you feel okay about your current job and don't want the added responsibility of the promotion, but you do appreciate the better pay that comes with it. You might feel stuck. However, there's so much more you could think about. Have you considered moving into an entirely different field altogether? Or a side hustle, a way to make money in your free time, alongside your current job? Perhaps immersing yourself in a hobby to shift your focus away from the time spent doing something you don't like as much? There's a big chance that there are many, many options in life that you're not even aware of. Taking a step back also means getting away from your own view and biases. When you let go of your own desires for a moment, you might be reminded of the people around you and your duty to them. When you are deciding what career move to take, maybe there are other choices you have not considered. Or maybe taking some time off to volunteer or help in the community is what you need. It can also help you to think more clearly about your values and goals. You might think that in the heat of the moment, littering is not a big deal, but when you step back and think of the entirety of the world, of the possibility of everybody else doing it, you finally see the smallness of your desire to litter in comparison to the well-being of the world. As said before, the Stoics thought that everything in the world is interconnected and that the general well-being of the world improves your personal well-being as well. Thus, taking a step back and looking at the world as a whole instead of just your life is tremendously important. As for taking some perspective on littering, just because littering one time in one place has no tangible or measurable bad effect, it leads to overall disrespect and a feeling that something like the environment is not worth saving or cleaning up. People with this kind of perspective lead to much greater overall problems. As such, it is never okay to litter. When facing a choice, hardship, problem, or change in life, you can inwardly ask yourself some questions. These questions may change you forever. This can be in the moment or later on, perhaps when you're thinking through your day, whether while out for a walk or when journaling about them. Something Aurelius was a particular fan of. What could the long-term effects of my choice/action be? How could someone else's perspective on this differ from mine? Do I know somebody in a similar situation or with similar goals to mine that could help? Does my choice/action affect my well-being? Does it affect the well-being of those around me? Are there any choices I have not considered yet? Taking the time to consider all aspects of the world helps yourself in the way that it helps you understand your actions, thoughts, life, and choices more clearly. And it helps yourself in the way that it allows you to help the world. When you consider the whole picture, you will always have an overseeing view that leaves you free from unnecessary restraint, bias, or doubt. Life is more manageable with perspective. You can see the connections between cause and effect. You can think clearly about the effects of choices and actions. Life is better when seeing the whole picture. The Marcus Aurelius mindset. Key takeaways for clear thinking. So what's the bottom line? How can you start thinking more like Marcus Aurelius today? The most common questions to ask yourself are, what could the long-term effects of my choice/action be? How could someone else's perspective on this differ from mine? Do I know somebody in a similar situation or with similar goals to mine that could help? Does my choice/action affect my well-being? Does it affect the well-being of those around me? Are there any choices I have not considered yet? Here's a quick recap of the 5 lessons we covered. Train your perception, challenge your initial judgments, and strive to see things objectively. Learn to control your emotions. Redirect your emotions in productive ways instead of suppressing them. Exercise the dichotomy of control. Focus on what you can control and accept what you can't. Keep virtues in mind. Let wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance guide your actions. Always consider the big picture. Take a step back and see things from a broader perspective. Taking the time to consider all aspects of the world helps yourself in the way that it helps you understand your actions, thoughts, life, and choices more clearly. And it helps yourself in the way that it allows you to help the world. When you consider the whole picture, you will always have an overseeing view that leaves you free from unnecessary restraint, bias, or doubt. Implementing these lessons into your daily life is a long journey, but it's one that will lead to greater clarity, resilience, and inner peace. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to check out our full Philosophies for Life playlist and for more videos to help you find success and happiness using ancient philosophical wisdom. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, the goal isn't to become a flawless Stoic overnight, but to make small, consistent steps towards a more rational and virtuous life.